Yeah, so good evening, everyone. It's Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Happy to be back. We are reading and trying to figure out the challenges of interpersonal relationship. Gurdeep will read a little reflection from the last session, and then we'll read today. Over to you, Gurdeep.
So, good evening, everyone. This reflection has been shared by Ms. Shalini Gupta. So, it's important to maintain clear personal boundaries, whether at work, at home, or in any other space. Many confrontations and arguments, especially with children or students, can be avoided when elders refrain from imposing their own goals under the pretext of it's for your good. Respecting individual choices and not intruding into their lives leads to healthier, more harmonious relationships. We must also learn to untangle complicated situations with fresh thinking, just as the Gordian knot was resolved with a new approach. And perhaps the most valuable lesson of all, don't fall into the trap of trying to please everyone. Because in the end, the only person who ends up unhappy is you. I think very thoughtful
Yeah, it's a
reflection.
very simple recap, very complete recap. So it covers the session so beautifully in these few words. And for the people who are not present last time, we learned something very interesting about the Gordian knot, how Alexander the Great unraveled the knot with his sword. So when you tell someone to open the knot, the people will struggle. So the idea was to break free from the knot. So he just took his sword and with one shot he switched it off. So that was a very interesting way of. So the message behind that is very simple. With one shot, just get the clutter out of your head. If you think too much and try and think to resolve things by thinking, then you are in a trap. And that's the beauty of the Gordian knot example, that it's an instantaneous call. You take a call, this is it, and move ahead. The whole idea behind the reading this book is very simple. That don't get stuck up on matters in your head. Just leave and go, as simple as that. So we'll read today. So that's how we are finding freedom. So Gordian knot was in a way a step to freedom. What real freedom is? Earlier, you acknowledged that you had not want to be disliked by anyone and said, there's no one anywhere who would go so far as to actually want to be disliked. This is a very
Right.
interesting example.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and I am the same way. I have no desire to be disliked by other people. I would say that no one would go so far as actually wanting to be disliked is a sharp insight.
It's a universal desire.
Even so, regardless of our efforts, there are people who dislike me and people who dislike you. This too is a fact. When you are disliked or feel that are being disliked by someone, what state of mind does it put in you?
Very distressed, to put it simply. I wonder why I have come to be disliked and what I did or said that might have been offensive. I think I should have interacted with the person in a different way. And I just brood and brood over it, and I'm ridden with guilt.
Not wanting to be disliked by other people? To human beings, this is an entirely natural desire and an impulse. Kant, the giant of modern philosophy, called this desire inclination.
Inclination?
Yes, it is one's instinctive desires, one's impulsive desires. Now, if one were to say that living like a stone, tumbling downhill, and allowing such inclination or desires or impulses to take one wherever they will is freedom, one would be incorrect. To live in such a way is only to be a slave to one's desires and impulses. Real freedom is an attitude akin to pushing up one's tumbling self from below.
Pushing oneself up from below.
A stone is powerless. Once it has begun to roll downhill, it will continue to roll until released from the natural laws of gravity and inertia. But we are not stones. We are beings who are capable of resisting inclination. We can stop our tumbling ourselves and climb uphill. The desire for recognition is probably a natural desire. So, you so are you going to keep rolling downhill in order to receive recognition from others? Are you going to wear yourself down like a rolling stone until everything is smoothed away? When all that is left is a little round ball, would that be the real I? It cannot be.
Are you saying that resisting one's instincts and impulses is freedom?
As I have stated repeatedly, in Adlerian psychology, we think that all problems are interpersonal relationships. In other words, we seek release from interpersonal relationships. We seek to be free from interpersonal relationships. However, it is absolutely impossible to live all alone in the universe. In light of that, we have discussed until now, the conclusion we reach regarding what is freedom would be clear.
What is it?
In short, that freedom is being disliked by other people.
What was that?
If that's you are disliked by someone, it is proof you are exercising your freedom and living in freedom, and a sign that you are living in accordance with your own principles.
But, but,
It is certainly distressful to be disliked. If possible, one would like to live without being disliked by anyone. One wants to satisfy one's desire for recognition, but conducting oneself in such a way as to not be disliked by anyone is an extremely unfree way of living and is also impossible. There is a cost incurred when one wants to exercise one's freedom. And the cost of freedom in interpersonal relationship is that one is disliked by other people.
no, that's totally wrong. There is no way that could be called freedom. That's a diabolical way of thinking to coax one into evil doing.
You'd probably been thinking of freedom as release from organizations. That breaking away from your home or school, your company or your nation is freedom. However, if you were to break away from your organization, for instance, you would not be able to gain real freedom unless one is unconcerned by other people's judgment, has no fear of being disliked by other people, and pays the cost that one might never be recognized. One will never be able to follow through in one's own way of living. This is to say, one will not be able to be free.
Be disliked by other people, is that what you are saying?
What I am saying is, don't be afraid of being disliked.
But that's
I am not telling you to go so far as to live in such a way that you will be disliked. And I am not saying engage in wrongdoing. Please do not misunderstand that.
no. Then let's change the question. Can people actually endure the weight of freedom? Are people that strong to not care even if one is disliked by one's own parents? Can one become so self righteously defiant?
One neither prepares to be self righteous nor becomes defiant. One just separates tasks. There may be a person who does not think well of you, but that is not your task. And again, thinking things like he should like me, or I have done all this, so it's strange that he doesn't like me, is the reward oriented way of thinking of having intervened in another person's tasks. One moves forward without fearing the possibility of being disliked. One does not live as if one were rolling downhill, but instead climbs the slope that lies ahead. That is freedom for a human being. Suppose that I had two choices in front of me, a life in which all people like me, and a life in which there are people who dislike me. And I was told to choose me. Choose one. I would choose the latter without a second thought. Before being concerned with what others think of me, I want to follow through with my own being. That is to say, I want to live in freedom.
Are you free now?
Yes, I am free now.
You do not want to be disliked, but you don't mind if you are?
Yes, that's right. Not wanting to be disliked is probably my task, but whatever or not so, and so dislikes me is the other person's task. Even if there's a person who doesn't think well of me, I cannot intervene in that. To borrow from the proverb I mentioned earlier, naturally, one would make the effort to lead a horse to water, but whether he drinks or not is the person's task.
That's some conclusion.
The courage to be happy also includes the courage to be disliked. When you have gained that courage, your interpersonal relationships will all at once change into things of lightness. Does anyone have any experience of freedom like this where you say, I care a damn? That's a standard phrase we use. And let me tell you, when you say, I care a damn, everything gets resolved by that. So I'm telling you a secret, live on your terms. Yes, you will have obligations, but don't let obligations come in the way of your freedom. It's important for you to think how to handle the situation and handle it and forget about it. It's like it's categorically said. You can't, predict what the other is thinking. Just think for yourself and move on. So that's like living in the present moment. Anyone has any thoughts, anything you want to share? You hold the cards to interpersonal relationships.
Well, I never would have imagined I would visit a philosopher's place to hear about being disliked.
I am well aware that this is not an easy thing to swallow. It will probably take some time to chew over and digest. If we go any further with this today, I think you won't be able to keep it in your head. So I would like to talk to you about one more thing, a personal matter that relates to the separation of tasks, and then finish up for today.
All right.
This one too is about relationship with parents. My relationship with my father had always been a rocky one when I was a child. My mother died when I was in my 20s without us ever engaging in anything like real conversation together. And after my relationship with my father became increasingly strained, that is, until I encountered Adlerian psychology and grasped Adler's ideas.
Why did you have a bad relationship with your father?
What I have in my memory is an image from a time when he hit me. I have no recollection of what I might have done to bring it on. I only remember hiding under a desk in an attempt to escape him when he dragged me out and hit me hard. and not just once, but many times. That fear became a trauma.
This is yours. Yeah.
Yeah, I read your sentence also. I think that until I encountered Adlerian psychology, I understood it in what kind of way. Because my father was a moody, tacky-turned person. But to think to myself, he hit me that time, and that is why our relationship went bad. Is a Freudian etiology way of thinking. The Adlerian teleology position completely reverses the cause and effect interpretation. That is to say, I brought out the memory of being hit because I don't want my relationship with my father to get better.
So, first, you had the goal of not wanting your relationship with your father to get better and not wanting to repair things between you.
That's right. For me, it was more convenient to do repair my relationship with my father. I could use having a father like that as an excuse for my way my own life wasn't going well. That for me was a virtue. And there was also the aspect of taking revenge on a feudal father.
That is exactly what I wanted to ask about. Even if the cause and effect were reversed, that is to say, in your case, you were able to analyze yourself and say, it isn't because he hit me that I have a bad relationship with my father, but that I brought out the memory of being hit because I don't want my relationship with my father to get better. Even then, how does it actually change things? It doesn't change the fact that you were hit in childhood, right?
One can think from the viewpoint that it is an interpersonal relationship card. As long as you use etiology to think, it is because he hit me that I have a bad relationship with my father. It would be a matter that was impossible for me to do anything about. But if I can think, I brought out the memory of being hit because I don't want my relationship with my father to go better, then I would be holding the card to repair relationship. Because if we can just change the goal, that fixes everything.
Does that really fix things?
Of course.
I wonder if you really feel so from the bottom of your heart. I can understand it in theory, but the feeling just doesn't sit right with me.
Then it's the separation of tasks. It's true that my father and I had a complicated relationship. He was a stubborn person, and I could never imagine his feelings being able to change easily. Moreover, there was a strong possibility that he had even forgotten ever raising his hands against me. However, at the time of making my resolution to repair relation, it did not matter to me what sort of lifestyle my father had, or what he thought of me, or the kind of attitude he might adopt in response to my approach. Such things didn't matter at all. Even if there were no intentions to repair relations on his side, I would not mind in the least. The issue was whether or not I would resolve to do it. And I was always holding the interpersonal relationship cards.
You were always holding the interpersonal relationship cards?
Yes, many people think that the interpersonal relationship cards are held by the other person. That is why they wonder, how does that person feel about me? And end up living in such a way as to satisfy the wishes of other people. But if they can grasp the separation of tasks, they will notice that they are holding all the cards. This is a new way of thinking.
So, due to your changing, did your father change too?
I did not change in order to change my father. That is an erroneous notion of trying to manipulate another person. Even if I change, it is only I who changes. I do not know what will happen to the other person as a result, and that is not an aspect I can take part in. This too is a separation of tasks. Of course, there are times when, in tandem with my change, not due to my change, the other person changes too. In many cases, that person will have no choice but to change. But that is not the goal. And it is certainly possible that the other person will not change. In any case, changing one's own speech and conduct as a way of manipulating other people is clearly a mistaken way of thinking.
One must not manipulate other people, and manipulating cannot be done.
When we speak of interpersonal relationship, it always seems to be two-person relationship and one person's relationship to a large group that come to mind. But first, it is to oneself. When one is tied to the desire for recognition, the interpersonal relationship cards will always stay in the hands of other people. Does one entrust the cards of life to another person or hold on to them oneself? Please take your time and sort these ideas again in your own head about the separation of tasks and about freedom. I'll wait for you here next time.
All right, I'll give it some thought on my own.
Well, then,
Please, there is just one more thing I want to ask you.
what is it?
In the end, were you able to repair your relationship with your father?
Yes, of course. I think so. My father fell ill, and the last few years of his life, it was necessary for me and my family to take care of him. Then one day, when I was taking care of my usual, my father said, "Thank you." I had not known my father possessed such a word in his vocabulary. Sorry. And I was astonished and felt grateful for all the days that had passed. Sorry. Through the long years of my caregiving life, I had tried to do whatever I could. That is to say, I had done my best to lead my father to water, and in the end, he drank. I think he did.
Well, thank you very much. I'll come again at the same time.
I had a good time. Thank you too. We'll pause here. I need a drink of water. So, thank you for leading me to water. And I decided to drink it, the water you led me to. So, we're coming to the introduction of the next chapter. This should
Yes,
be chapter 4, right?
fourth night, yes.
Yeah, this is so we have now come so far out of the 5 nights, we've reached the fourth night. Is it 5 nights total?
Total, sir, it is, yeah, 5 nights.
So you are coming to a solution soon. We're already on night 4. So you can say we are more than halfway through to discover the courage to be disliked. That was close. I almost fell for it. The following week, the young man called on the philosopher again and, with an indignant expression, knocked on the door. The idea of separating tasks is certainly a useful one. You had me completely convinced last time. But it seems like such a lonely way to live. Separating the tasks and lightening the load of one's interpersonal relations is just the same as cutting one's connection to other people. And to top it off, you are telling me to be disliked by other people? If that's what you call freedom, then I'll choose not to be free. So we are on our way to discover what is freedom, what is the role of an individual, and what does holism mean? Individual psychology and holism. Well, you're looking rather gloomy today.
You see, since we last met, I have been thinking calmly and carefully about the separation of task and about freedom. I waited until my emotions had settled and then applied my reasoning mind. But the separation of task just doesn't seem realistic.
Okay, please go on.
So, separating task is basically an idea that boils down to defining a boundary and saying, I am I and you are you. Sure, there are probably fewer interpersonal relationship problems that way, but would you really say that such a way of life is right? To me, it just seems like an extremely self centered, misguided individualism. On my first visit here, you told me that Adlerian psychology is formally referred to as individual psychology. That term had been bothering me for quite a while, but I finally figured out why. What you are calling Adlerian psychology or individual psychology is essentially the study of an individualism that leads people into isolation.
It is true that the term individual psychology, which Adler coined, has certain aspects that may invite misunderstanding. I'll explain what I mean now. First of all, etymologically speaking, the word individual has the meaning indivisible.
Indivisible?
Yes, in other words, it is the smallest possible unit and therefore cannot be broken any further. Now, what is it exactly that cannot be divided? Adler was opposed to any kind of dualistic value system that treated the mind was separate from the body, reason as separate from emotion, or the conscious mind as separate from the unconscious mind.
What's the point of that?
For example, do you remember the story about the female student who came to me for counseling on account of a fear of blushing? Why did she develop the fear of blushing? In Adlerian psychology, psychological symptoms are not regarded separately from the mind or the psyche. The mind and the body are viewed as one, as a whole that cannot be divided into parts. Tension in the mind cannot make one's arms and legs shake or cause one's cheeks to turn red, and fear can make one's face turn white, and so on.
Well, sure, there are parts of the mind and body that are connected.
The same holds true for reason and emotion, and the conscious mind and the unconscious mind as well. A normal, cool headed person doesn't expect to have a fit of violent emotion and start shouting at someone. We are not just struck by emotions that somehow exist independently from us. Each of us is a unified whole.
No, that's not true. It's precisely because we have the ability to view mind and body, reason and emotion, and the conscious and the unconscious mind as clearly separate from each other that we can gain a correct understanding of people. Isn't it that a given?
Certainly, it is true that the mind and the body are separate things, that reason and emotion are different, and that both the conscious mind and the unconscious mind exist. That said, however, when one flies into a rage and shouts at another person, it is I was a whole who is choosing to shout. One would never think of emotions that somehow exist independently, unrelated to one's intentions, as it were, as having produced that shouting voice. When one separates the I from emotion and thinks, it is the emotion that made me do it, or the emotion got the better of me and I couldn't help it. Such things quickly become a life lie.
So you are referring to the time I yelled at the waiter, aren't you?
Yes, this view of the human being as I, as a whole, as an indivisible being that cannot be broken down into parts, is referred to as holism.
Well, that's fine, but I wasn't asking you for an academic theory to provide a definition of individual. Look, if you take Adlerian psychology to its logical conclusion, it's basically saying I am I and you are you, and leading people toward isolation. It's saying I won't interfere with you, so don't interfere with me either. And we'll both go on living however we please. Please tell me straightforwardly what your awareness is of that point.
All right, all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. You have an understanding of this basic tenet of Adlerian psychology, correct?
Yes, I do. The idea of non interference in interpersonal relations, that is to say, the separation of task, probably came about as a way to resolve those problems.
This is something I believe I went over last time. That forming good interpersonal relationship requires a certain degree of distance, while people who get too close end up not being able to speak to each other. It is not good to get too far apart either. Please do not think of the separation of tasks as something that is meant to keep other people away. Instead, see it as a way of thinking with which to unravel the threads of the complex entanglement of one's interpersonal relationships.
To unravel the threads,
Exactly. Right now, your threads and other people's threads are all tangled up in a confused mess. And you're looking at the world while in that condition red, blue, brown, and green, all the colors mixing together. You think of it as a connection, but it is not.
so then what do you think connection is?
Last time, I spoke of the separation of tasks as a prescription of resolving interpersonal relationship problems. But the interpersonal relationships are not something that end just because one has separated the task. The separating of tasks is actually the point of departure from interpersonal relationships. Today, let's take the discussion deeper so as to address how interpersonal relations as a whole are viewed in Adlerian psychology and consider the kind of relationships we would form with others.
The goal of interpersonal relationships is a feeling of community. Okay, I have a question. Please give me a simple answer that gets straight to the heart of the matter. You said that the separating of task is a point of departure for interpersonal relations. Well, what is the goal of interpersonal relations?
To get straight to the heart of the matter, it is community feeling.
Community feeling?
Yes, this is a key concept in Adlerian psychology, and views on its application have been the subject of much debate. In fact, Adler's proposal of the concept of community feeling drove many people to part away with him.
Well, it sounds fascinating to me. What is this concept?
It was the time before last, I believe, that I brought up the matter of how one sees others, that is, as enemies or as comrades. Now, take a step deeper. If other people are our comrades and we live surrounded by them, we should be able to find in that life our own place of refuge. Moreover, in doing so, we should begin to have the desire to share with our comrades, to contribute to the community. This sense of others as comrades, this awareness of having one's own refuge, is called community feeling.
But what part of this is open to debate? It seems like a completely irrefutable point.
The issue is community. What does it consist of? When you hear the word community, what images come to your mind?
There are such frameworks as one's household, school, or workplace, or local society.
When Adler refers to community, he goes beyond the household, school, workplace, and local society and treats it as all inclusive, covering not only nations and all of humanity, but the entire axis of time, from the past to the future. And he includes plants and animals, and even inanimate objects.
Hmm.
In other words, he is espousing that community is not merely one of the pre existing frameworks that the word might bring to mind, but is also inclusive of literally everything in the entire universe from the past to the future.
No way. Now you have lost me. The universe? Past and future? What on earth are you talking about?
The majority of those who hear this have similar doubts. This is not something one can comprehend immediately. Adler himself acknowledged that the community he was espousing was an unattainable ideal.
Haha. Well, that's perplexing, isn't it? How about the other way around then? Do you really comprehend and accept this community feeling or whatever it is that includes the entire universe?
I try to because I feel that one cannot truly comprehend Adlerian psychology without comprehending this point.
Okay, then.
As I have been saying all along, Adlerian psychology was the view that all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. Interpersonal relationships are the source of unhappiness, and the opposite can be said too. Interpersonal relationships are the source of happiness.
Indeed.
Furthermore, community feeling is the most important index for considering a state of interpersonal relationship that is happy.
All right. I would like to hear all about it.
Community feeling is also referred to as social interest, that is to say, interest in society. So now I have a question for you. Do you know what society's smallest unit is from the point of view of sociology?
Society's smallest unit, I would say the family.
No, it is you and I. When there are two people, society emerges in their presence, and the community emerges there too to gain an understanding of the community feeling that Adler speaks of. It is advisable to use you and I as a starting point.
And what do you do with that as the starting point?
You make the switch from attachment of self-interest, to the concern for others, social interest.
Attachment to self, concern for others. What's all that about?
Why I'm only interested in myself? Well, let's consider this concretely. For purposes of clarity, in place of attachment to self, I will use the word self centered. In your view, someone who is self centered is what sort of person?
Hmm. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is the kind of person who's like a tyrant, someone who is domineering, has no qualms about being a nuisance to others, and only thinks about things that are to his own advantage. He thinks that the world revolves around him, and he behaves like a dictator who rules by absolute authority and force. He is the kind of person who creates an enormous amount of trouble for everyone around him. Someone who is just like Shakespeare King Lear, a typical tyrant.
I see.
On the other hand, he wouldn't necessarily be a tyrant. One might speak of the sort of person who disturbs the harmony of a group as self centered too. He's someone who can't operate in a group and prefers to act alone. He never stops to reflect on his actions, even when he's late for appointments or fails to keep his promises. In a word, he's an egotist.
To be sure, that is the kind of image that generally comes to mind when thinking of self centered people. But there is another type that must be taken into account. People who are incapable of carrying out of the separation of tasks and who are obsessed with the desire for recognition are also extremely self-centered.
And why is that?
Consider the reality of the desire for recognition. How much do others pay attention to you? And what is the judgment of you? That is to say, how much do they satisfy your desire? People who are obsessed with such a desire for recognition will seem to be looking for other people, while they are actually only looking at themselves. They lack concern for others and are concerned solely with the I. Simply put, they are self centered.
So, would you say that people like me who fear being judged by others are self centered too? Even though I try so hard to be mindful of others and adjust myself to them.
Yes, in the sense that you are concerned solely with the I, you are self centered. You want to be thought well of by others. That is why you worry about the way they look at you. That is not concern for others. It is nothing about attachment to self.
But
This is something I spoke of last time. The fact that there are people who do not think well of you is proof that you are living in freedom. You might have a sense of something about this that seems self centered, but I think you understood this from today's discussion. A way of living in which one is constantly troubled by how one is seen by others is a self centered style in which one's sole concern is with the I.
well, now that is an astounding statement.
Not just you, but all people who are attached to the I are self centered. And that is precisely why it is necessary to make the switch from attachment to self to concern for others.
Okay, so yes, it is true that I'm always looking only at myself. That I acknowledge. I'm constantly worried about how other people see me, but not about how I see them. If you're saying I'm self-centered, there is nothing that I can say to refute that. But think about it like this. If my life were a feature-length movie, the protagonist would certainly be this I, wouldn't it? Is pointing the camera at the protagonist really such a reprehensible thing?
Let's take a pause here.
Shall I put a bookmark here?
Yeah, do that.
Hmm.
You're not the center of the world. You can take a screenshot
Yes.
and post it in the WhatsApp group so people who are reading ahead will get an idea. So thank you, everyone. Let me see what is your concept of I and what relationships, anyone, any example, what you carry of your I into building your relationship and what then goes ahead after that. Anything that comes to your mind. Kushi, let's start with you. What did you discover in today's chapter?
So in today's chapter, all the chapters, I guess, I was just noticing that how uh the philosopher is, don't mind it, but I was just thinking like that, that whatever the youth is saying, the philosopher is giving the all the kind of academic theories, kind of things like Adlerian psychology or something like that. And in my point of view, that's not really something which I can do practically, the thing philosopher is saying. But at some points I agree with him, and at some I'm like, how would I do it like that?
That's exactly the whole story is. And that's the conversation. I'm glad you got it. She just put it so well. If you see, this is what is happening every time. And that's youth self-doubt and the philosopher's confidence playing in the book. Thank you for that. Gurdeep, you want to add something to that? You're
I
on mute,
was
please. Yeah.
listening to Khushi. Khushi is right. This is very complex. Like theoretical, it seems very easy. But implementation wise, I think it's very difficult. We all are trapped in this desire to seek recognition from others, and we always live in this fear. Okay, what they are thinking of me, and this concept of I is ingrained in our system, I would say. So I totally agree with Khushi on this point.
Yeah, but that's why very few find freedom.
Yes.
And I often say leadership is the most loneliest battle.
Yeah.
So when you're fighting for the leadership, you're actually doing it with yourself. You're not doing it with anyone outside. And leader ultimately is all alone there. So a lot of us have this fear to reach that space and don't want to be alone. So we will not lead ourselves to that step of freedom and take a decision like the courage to be disliked. I care a damn, like I said when it started today. To reach that level of thought, it requires a lot of practice.
Yeah.
It requires years of taking control of temperament. It requires years of not having any remorse or not having any doubt in yourself. So you only reach this stage after phenomenal thought. So Kushi is absolutely right because Kushi is not read Adlerian psychology or Freud or Kant or anyone like that. And what happens is when you end up reading so much, that's where you find freedom.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to highlight today. That when you read, you lead, as simple as that. And that's precisely why we are trying to do this particular session in this way, where we are trying to use the power of reading to build your thinking. And if you see when we pause here, and I intentionally read very slowly, I can read much faster than what I'm reading. But the interesting bit is that one must pause and contemplate. And when you contemplate, you realize ये सब व्यर्थ है. And that's the whole message behind the book. That a lot of this thought in your head is just waste of your time because you're presuming so much. And if presumptions hold us to ransom, then we can never be free.
And they say
Akanksha?
that the more you leave, the more you live.
Yeah, absolutely. Akanksha, you want to say something?
I like that line that individuality is in indivisibility. Means loving yourself, not caring about others also, but concern you are concerned about others. Together, I have to think whether it's possible or not. मतलब कि
No.
you are huh, you're not making yourself hurt also by the statement of others. मतलब, and you are concerning about others also ki what I see in them.
Yeah, so this is an important part, what you're saying. There's a duality there.
Hmm.
And the whole story about this book is to overcome that duality. Where,
Yes.
where I repeat the third time today, I care a damn.
Hmm.
And to get this confidence takes a while. Because in
Correct.
today's date, particularly in this world, which is sometimes mind numbing on, if you ask me, that you have to now think of everything you say simply
Hmm.
because your saying creates opinions around you. And sometimes you're afraid of the opinions and you don't say anything. That's not freedom. So I made
Yes,
it
sir.
very simple for you because if the opinion of others holds you back, then you're not free. And
And
that
now
is the courage to be. Yeah.
how nicely he said that story na. It happens also sometimes when we don't care about any relationship, like he told about his father. It's very difficult matlab, to not to care about a father. But as he told that as the time passed, gradually his relationship became very smooth. And
Yeah, it'll happen. It'll
it
happen in every
happens.
family. If in
Yeah, it
family you
happens.
have two siblings, one always feels that the other is the more
Hmm.
favored one. And that is a presumption. And if you're an elder sibling, obviously you will always have this that the younger sibling has a better place. And to a large extent, when my mother was alive, I'm sharing something very interesting with you. I always thought that there was something which she did not give me. But now, when I look back, I sometimes feel I think I got everything.
Hmm.
So it's your thought which made me think that way. And then even a better step than that is that if today I sit and think of all her actions, I actually think that maybe I saw only smoke, I didn't see the fire. And that's why I realized that whatever I'm doing today is very much the way she would have done things. So when I'm doing things the way she was doing them, I'm actually seconding being what she thought I should be, and I am that. And once I've discovered I am that, I think that's the end of the road. That's where freedom is. I know all this
Actually.
will sound too philosophical, and Kushi will say, what is this old man going round and round and round? But Kushi, it's very interesting when elders talk to you. Sorry, I'm putting an elder and younger in the discussion room. When elders talk to you, you always think, अब तो ये बोलते रहेंगे कुछ ना कुछ. But the matter of fact is, when you reach that stage, you realize कितना जरूरी था ये सब बोलना. So on that note, I think it's a great evening. Kunal, you want to add something? You came into the latter part of the session.
Yeah, it's I think the word community, then the self-centered, and I think these are amazing. I'll keep coming again and again.
Yeah, these are interesting thoughts. Manisha, anything you want to add?
No, sir.
You're thinking. That's important. So
Yeah,
thank
I'm
you,
thinking what to say.
Akanksha. Thank you, Akanksha. Thank you, Gurdeep. Thank you, Kushi. That's how you like to be called. Thank you, Kunhal. It's been a great evening. We will meet next Saturday the same time and we'll discover how we can get over this dilemma, if I can leave it at that, and discover what am I. And that's what the whole book is that. And there's also a book called I Am That. Try and discover that. There's a book called I Am That. It's a very interesting book. It's written by an Indian Maharaj, if I may use that word. I Am That. It's very interesting. It's a very simple read. And in a session, I'll leave another book with you today. Let's read I Am That sometime later. Thank you so much. You will look forward to the newsletter. There's lots to write this week when I sit down tomorrow. And the most beautiful part, what happened this week on 9th of December, where we managed to get some new interesting people to lead us as the custodians of what we are doing at the Good Schools Alliance. So we now have a new set of governing council. We have new people and with new ideas. I'm sure we will see a lot good happening in 2026. Does two things. One, it frees us from governance matters and it gives us time to do more work in the field. This is our field where you and me are. So, per se, now I have a greater role to actually volunteer and work in sessions and less of a role in governance and taking decisions for the organization, which I think is what I always wanted. And in 5 years' time, we have come a long way. Thank you for holding our hands. On that note, have a great Saturday evening. See you next Saturday. Thank you, Gurdeep. Any reflections are all welcome. You can write in the WhatsApp chat. We'll pick them up from there because I think that is the easiest. Though Shalini made an attempt to do a blog, which turned out to be well, which was a great attempt. But if any of you feel like blogging, we're happy to create a blogger's ID for you. You can do it yourself, create a draft. We can help you polish it and publish it. Edit it if you want, or don't even do that. We are happy to publish it on your behalf. So in case you want a blogger ID, just ping us. We can create it. You want to write in WhatsApp, that's your wish. You don't want to write, even that's very good because that means you're thinking. On that note, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Thank you.